Every web designer has their own creative process. I will share mine with you, and you can decide what you would like to implement into your own. Before I even begin to switch the computer on, I grab a pencil and paper and draw rough sketches of how I envision the website will function. At this stage, I don't really concern my thoughts with color and style. I first think about how many columns and buttons the website need and how I can fit in the content provided by the client. For this project, our imaginary client is Julia Wild, the proud owner of a vintage boutique store in Constantia. She wants enough space allocated for the clothes to be on display, so the design will be more reliant on photos than body copy. And the photos can't be small, they need to be large enough to showcase the garments. I decided upon a 2-column asymmetrical design because I want the photos to take center stage. I decided to place the navigation at the left, then the photos can be pushed up to the top of the screen without compromising the user's habit of looking for navigation at the top of the screen. Do you remember during the presentation of Unit 3 when I spoke about identifying regions on your page? Well, here you can see how I have allocated 3 regions. The regions are determined by the grouping of elements that serve a common goal. On the left, I allocated the logo and buttons as all elements that serve as navigation bar. Therefore, I named it Navigation. The column on the right contains all the photos and body copy on the page, and therefore it contains the content of the page, and I named it appropriately Content. And lastly, the social media icons, which will be present on every page in this design, serve as the footer, and I named it accordingly. The width of both columns is also specified. Left is 300 pixels and right is 600 pixels wide. I don't need to specify the length of the column because that is content driven. Thus, the length is determined by the amount of photos and text. The width of the footer does not need to be specified because it stretches across the full length of the other 2 columns, but its height does need to be specified. I have tentatively decided it can be 200 pixels in height. Now that I'm satisfied with the general layout of the page, I begin to consider color. Our imaginary client, Miss Wild, already had a logo for her shop, that lovely golden delicious monster leaf. The typeface choice of the word Wild Vintage also reminds me of the Art Deco era, the time of the Great Gatsby and the Belle Epoque. So I begin to compile a mood board. I research Art Deco and the Belle Epoque. I found that beautiful photo online of the leaf brooch with the green and amber-tipped leaves. That sparked the color combination of yellows and green for me. The Belle Epoque is also an era where lush velvet fabrics are frequently used to make clothes. I also found beautiful Art Nouveau-inspired green tiles and found the same concept of foliage and green and gold as color combination in the wallpaper design of William Morris, as well as other textile pattern designs. Creating a mood board is a wonderful way to orient yourself where you are creatively and visually heading towards. I used Adobe Illustrator to create the mood board. There are also many free online mood board creating websites. I also like to use online color scheme generators. They provide color scheme suggestions based on color theory. Color is very powerful and it has the ability to unify the website and to create an emotive response in the user. There are many color scheme generators online. In Unit 3, I mentioned w3schools.com. You can use the color hexagon to pick a color, or you can click on the colored rectangle below, or use HTML5 and a pop-up box will appear that is much more intuitive to work with. What is very nice about the site is that it displays how the color will react as background to black, white, and text with shadow. It is very important to always ensure that your text is legible. Be sensitive towards users who are colorblind or have other impairments. There are also other features that you can explore. To play with color schemes, I prefer to use a color scheme site such as Cooler or Peloton. Adobe Cooler is the online color scheme generator of Adobe. You can see that it allows you to choose a color scheme according to color theory, such as analogous, monochromatic, and so forth. It is very intuitive because you can choose your main color and it will make suggestions for colors that will match it well. Or you can drag directly on the color wheel with the mouse. I used Peloton for this project. It also allows you to choose the type of color scheme by clicking one of the icons at the top. It displays the suggested color scheme on the right. When the mouse hovers over a color, it displays the hexadecimal color. By clicking on it, it will provide more detailed information on the color's composition, such as its RGB value in percentages, hue, and luminosity. I knew I wanted a velvety dark green and the gold, as was already used in the logo. So I chose an analogous color scheme and played around with the color wheel combinations until I found the most pleasing colors. Then I looked up their hexadecimal value and wrote it down. Now that I have a layout and general color and style idea for the project, I interpret that as composites in Illustrator. Any similar program or Photoshop will also work. Illustrator provides me the ease to move elements around on the artboard without considering the code. You can see how the colors are interpreted and also how I made typography and other style choices. I've decided to extend the opulence of the gold in the buttons. I've also made the leaf icon as a special touch to separate elements in the content section. It also reminds me of book designs from that era. The more you consider what the site will look like at this stage, the easier the coding part of the project will be, because then you only need to concern yourself with interpreting it as close as possible to your initial design. Once I am satisfied with the design, I can open Dreamweaver and begin coding.